Welcome to the Deep Dive, the show where we take a stack of sources and extract the most important nuggets of knowledge to get you well-informed, fast. Today we're taking a deep dive into an institution that, well, it's become truly synonymous with world-changing ideas and groundbreaking innovation. The Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT. You know, when you hear MIT, you probably picture brilliant minds, cutting-edge research, maybe even a robot or two.
Definitely.
But our mission for this deep dive is to go beyond just recognizing that stellar reputation. We want to really unpack why and how MIT has achieved this preeminent status. We'll be looking at its foundational vision, its unique internal structures, and those incredible external connections that have fueled, well, centuries of discovery. So let's unpack this.
It's pretty remarkable, actually. MIT's entire innovative capacity, you could argue, traces back to this one powerful, almost revolutionary idea for its time. The indivisible union of deep intellectual inquiry and, tangible practical application. It's perfectly encapsulated in their motto, mens et manus.
Latin for mind and hand.
Exactly. And it's not just some catchy slogan. It really is the institution's foundational operating system. It shapes pretty much everything they do. You have to think about America back in the mid-19th century. Higher education, mostly dominated by a classical model theology, literature, abstract learning.
Right. Very different from today.
Totally. But the nation was industrializing like crazy, railroads, factories, cities popping up. And MIT's founder, William Barton Rogers, he was a distinguished natural scientist, and he found himself incredibly frustrated.
Why frustrated?
Well, he saw this critical gap. He just couldn't find workers who understood both the scientific principles and how to effectively, apply them with technical skill. He had this vision for a completely new type of polytechnic institution, what we now basically call a technology institute, that would directly integrate science into fields like engineering, geology.
So bridging that gap.
Precisely. And this vision became the Rogers Plan. It was built on three core principles. First, the educational value of useful knowledge. Second, the absolute necessity of learning by doing. And third, integrating professional and liberal arts education. It was a direct rejection of the rote learning common back then.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Mentis Manus wasn't just a theory on paper, right?
Not at all.
From MIT's very first classes back in 1865, it was implemented as like a core operational directive. They pioneered the teaching laboratory.
Yeah, that was huge.
Not for faculty demos, but as a central part of the curriculum where students really got their hands dirty, conducting experiments, learning by direct personal experience. That hands-on approach, it must have been truly revolutionary then.
Absolutely.
Students had to master foundational courses, math, chemistry, physics. But these weren't just abstract concepts floating around. They were immediately connected to the real world through tons of lab work and organized field trips to factories, mines, railroad construction sites. They quite literally saw the technological world being built firsthand.
But, initially MIT faced a lot of criticism.
Oh, like what?
It was often dismissed as a mere trade school, just a place for vocational training. But that view completely missed Rogers' much higher ambition. His goal wasn't simply to produce better technicians. He wanted to train a new generation of leaders, people capable of actually guiding industrialization individuals who possessed, as he put it, a grasp of human nature, of basic sciences, of mathematics, far beyond the requirements for making this or that machine work.
So a broader vision.
Exactly. And that's why under President Francis Amasa Walker later on, the curriculum deliberately expanded. They added economics, history, law, modern languages.
Countering the trade school label.
Precisely. And reinforcing that commitment to a broader, more strategic education. What's truly insightful here is how mens et manus evolved. It became this sophisticated model for leadership in a technological age. Mind gives you the foundational why, and hand gives you the practical how.
Mind and hand.
By uniting them, MIT aimed to produce individuals uniquely equipped not just to operate technology, but to direct its advancement and, crucially, invent entirely new industries.
It really makes you think about how that seamless integration, deep principles and practical action applies to solving complex problems in your own life or work, doesn't it?
It really does.
Okay, so MIT's history isn't just this smooth upward curve. It's a really compelling story of what you might call crisis-driven adaptation.
That's a great way to put it.
These national and global challenges didn't just happen to MIT. They seem to have actively forged its character, reshaping it again and again.
Absolutely. I mean, think about it. The Institute was chartered in 1861, right as the American Civil War broke out.
Wow, timing.
Yeah, which delayed its operational beginning until 1865. And interestingly, it was also established as a land-grant college under the Morrill Act of 1862. That gave a private university a clear public mission right from the get-go.
And we saw significant growth under President Francis Amasa Walker, right? Late 19th century.
We did, big time.
He introduced groundbreaking engineering programs, electrical, chemical engineering, things like that, and quadrupled the student body. This whole era really culminated in that monumental 1916 move
To Cambridge.
to its current Cambridge campus, across the Charles River. And that move was made possible by this huge anonymous donation, something like $20 million.
That's right. Turned out to be George Eastman.
The founder of Eastman Kodak. Incredible.
Then came World War II. That truly transformed MIT, ushering in the era of big science.
Big science.
Vannevar Bush, who was MIT's vice president then, headed the Federal Office of Scientific Research and Development. He funneled immense resources to the institute. Think about the radiation laboratory, the RAD lab.
Right.
Established in 1940, yeah. It massively accelerated microwave radar development, a totally decisive technology for the Allies. Then you had Charles Stark Draper's instrumentation laboratory, developing revolutionary gyroscope-based control systems for navigation. And Project Whirlwind, which pioneered one of the first digital computers capable of real-time flight simulations. This work was just on an immense scale, and it profoundly cemented MIT's lasting relationship with the federal government.
But this incredible success, especially with things like the Manhattan Project, it led to this unique crisis of conscience after the war, didn't it?
It did.
Scientists involved in developing atomic weapons, they grappled with the ethical implications. It raised a really profound question for MIT. What's the ultimate responsibility of a technically powerful institution?
That's precisely right. There was this growing fear within the institute that a purely technical education, untethered from humanistic concerns, could actually be dangerous.
Yeah, I could see that.
And this sentiment was formally articulated in the landmark 1949 Lewis Report. It warned of an overly narrow curriculum. Its recommendations led directly to creating the School of Humanities and Social Sciences, ESHAS, and the MIT Sloan School of Management in 1950.
Ah, so that's when they came about.
Yes. It was a very deliberate institutional effort to provide a counterbalance, making sure undergraduates got a broad education alongside their technical training.
And this commitment, it was tested again during the Vietnam War, right?
Okay.
With all the protests against military research.
They're intensely tested, yeah.
That tumultuous period actually led to a major restructuring. Those classified defense labs like the Draper Lab and Lincoln Lab, they were spun off.
Correct. Fundamentally redefining MIT's military ties. But interestingly, it was right in the middle of all that turmoil that the Undergraduate Research Opportunities Program, UROP, was born in 1969.
Wow, URP started then.
Yep. A remarkable example of adapting to challenges, even amidst chaos. And this spirit of adaptation, it just kept going into the modern era. You have the founding of the MIT Media Lab in 1985.
Media Lab, yeah.
Pioneering what they call anti-disciplinary research, actively blurring the lines between tech, art, design. It's not just interdisciplinary, connecting existing fields, it's anti-disciplinary, challenging the boundaries, pushing into totally new, undefined spaces.
Asking questions no single field would ask.
Exactly, leading to really unexpected breakthroughs. And then, fast forward to 2002, MIT demonstrated this radical commitment to openness with its open courseware project, OCW.
Right, making course materials free online.
Nearly all of them.
No.
Available to anyone in the world. Just a huge move.
It's fascinating how an institution's identity gets forged and reforged through how it engages with the biggest challenges of its time. What stands out to you most about how MIT navigated and adapted through all these historical shifts?
The consistency of that mind-and-hand ethos, maybe? Even as the challenges changed, that core idea seemed to guide the adaptation.
You know, the sheer volume of world-changing ideas coming out of MIT, it's clearly not random. It feels like the product of a deliberately engineered internal ecosystem.
It really is.
A highly refined pipeline, almost, designed to foster discovery and, importantly, de-risk innovation. It seems characterized by these porous organizational boundaries that actively encourage people to work together across disciplines.
That's spot on. Unlike a lot of traditional universities structured really rigidly by departments, MIT's research enterprise has, I think, over 65 interdisciplinary labs and centers.
Wow.
65.
Yeah. And they're designed specifically to tackle complex problems that naturally cross single disciplines. They bring together faculty and students from across all 5 schools at MIT.
Hmm.
This structure just actively creates this free flow of ideas and encourages, unconventional teams.
Can you give some examples?
Sure. So you've got the Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence Laboratory, CSL. It's a global hub for both foundational and applied research in AI, robotics, computing. It's spun off hundreds of companies.
Hundreds, okay.
Then there's the MIT Media Lab, famous for that antidisciplinary culture we mentioned, and its demo or die emphasis on creating working prototypes, blending tech, art, design in really surprising ways.
You have the Koch Institute for Integrative Cancer Research. What's cool there is it physically co-locates top cancer biologists and engineers, literally puts them in the same building to accelerate novel cancer diagnostics and therapies just through daily interaction.
That makes sense. Fostering collaboration.
Exactly. And maybe one more. The Socio-Technical Systems Research Center, SSRC, it explicitly focuses on that complex interplay between technology and society, making sure solutions are designed with a deep understanding of the human and social context.
So, okay, we have these massive interdisciplinary powerhouses, but how does MIT cultivate innovation right down at the student level, like from the very beginning of their time there?
That's where the Undergraduate Research Opportunities Program, UROP, truly shines. It's an absolute cornerstone.
One started back in '69.
That's the one. Over 90% of MIT undergrads participate in UROP at least once. It allows any undergrad, even first years, to directly collaborate with faculty on cutting-edge research projects. They can do it for credit or get paid.
90%. That's incredible participation.
It is, and it's way more than just a typical internship. It really immerses students in authentic research culture. They learn real-world problem solving, collaboration, communication, and importantly, resilience. Dealing with inevitable failed experiments. It's just this massive, decentralized talent development engine.
That sounds incredibly impactful for students just starting out. But what about for those who have, say, entrepreneurial aspirations? They want to take an idea from the classroom and actually build a company.
Right. For them, there's the MIT Sandbox Innovation Fund, launched in 2016. Its design is really quite unique. It's set up to develop people and their ideas, not just, crank out startups.
How does it work?
It provides student-led teams with tailored mentorship, educational programming, and, crucially, up to $25,000 in non-dilutive seed funding.
Non-dilutive, meaning MIT takes no equity.
Exactly. That's key. It's not a competition either. They accept teams based on commitment, not just the best idea. Students keep all their intellectual property rights. It fosters this really safe environment for experimentation, even for failure, and it's flexible, integrating with their academic schedules.
That sounds like a fantastic model. And then what about for those faculty-led innovations, the really deep tech stuff that's maybe moving closer to being commercially viable but needs a push towards the market?
That's the precise role of the Deshpande Center for Technological Innovation, founded back in 2002. Its whole mission is to bridge MIT labs to the marketplace.
How does it do that?
It awards grants, usually between $50,000 and $150,000, to promising later-stage technologies coming out of the labs. But crucially, each team that gets a grant is paired with a catalyst.
A catalyst?
Yeah, an experienced business mentor, often an alum or industry vet, who provides invaluable guidance on things like market evaluation, business plan development, connecting with investors. This combination, the grant money plus the mentorship, has funded close to 200 projects, leading to over 50 spin-out companies that have collectively raised well over $1 billion.
Wow. So this isn't just a random collection of programs, is it? It feels like a really meticulously constructed pipeline.
That's exactly what it is.
Designed to foster innovation at every single level.
Yeah.
It really makes you consider how creating such a structured path, from a raw idea, maybe in a UROP project through Sandbox, potentially to Deshpande, can truly maximize the potential for breakthroughs, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It reduces the friction at each stage.
Now, to fully grasp MIT's innovative power, you really have to look beyond its campus walls. We need to talk about Kendall Square in Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Yes.
Often called the most innovative square mile on the planet. How is MIT's success so inextricably linked to this external ecosystem right on its doorstep?
Well, MIT isn't just located in Kendall Square. It's truly the chief architect and convener of the entire area.
Architect. How so?
As one of the largest landowners there, MIT has actively pursued this multi-decade redevelopment strategy. They've transformed old industrial buildings, parking lots, into this thriving mixed-use district. Lab space, office space, housing, public areas, all designed specifically to foster interaction.
So it was intentional development.
Very intentional. And it's a story of coevolution. As MIT's research focus shifted, particularly with the rise of life sciences, biotech companies like Biogen and Genzyme chose to locate right there in Kendall Square. Why? To be close to the talent, the discoveries coming out of MIT labs, this created this powerful self-reinforcing cycle. Success breeds success.
So the physical proximity, the deliberate development, clearly crucial. But what about the money? The massive funding that fuels all this groundbreaking research, where does that primarily come from?
It really comes from what we can call the funding triad.
The triad. Okay.
First, government funding. A significant chunk of the fundamental high-risk research is underwritten by the U.S. federal government agencies like the NSF, NIH, Department of Defense. For example, nearly 2/3 of CSAIL's research volume in a recent year was federally funded.
Okay, so government is huge. What's next?
Second, industry partnerships. Direct sponsorship from the private sector. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars annually from hundreds of companies. This ensures research stays connected to real-world problems and applications.
Right. And the third part of the triad.
Philanthropy and the endowment. MIT has a substantial endowment valued in the tens of billions of dollars. This provides stable, long-term funding. It allows them to support risky, long-horizon research and near unproven ideas, especially when other funding sources might be volatile. This triad gives them incredible stability and flexibility.
Okay, so the research gets funded, ideas get developed in the labs. How does MIT then formally transfer this knowledge, this intellectual property, into the commercial marketplace for public benefit? What's the mechanism?
That's the critical function of the Technology Licensing Office, the TLO. It's the formal mechanism for moving MIT-generated IP inventions, software, data, you name it, into commercial use.
How does that process work generally?
Well, it usually starts with an invention disclosure from a researcher, a faculty member, or student. The TLO then evaluates its commercial potential, works on protecting it, often through patents, actively markets it to potential companies, and then negotiates the license agreements.
And it's pretty effective.
Remarkably so. In a recent year, they received something like 679 invention disclosures, filed over 600 new U.S. patent applications, executed 112 license agreements, saw 24 new companies formed based on MIT tech, and generated nearly $40 million in licensing revenue. That revenue then gets reinvested back into research and education. It's a really productive engine.
So when you put it all together, you have this dynamic, self-reinforcing flywheel, right? Basic research, often government-funded, generates discoveries. Those discoveries translate into spin-off companies, often located right there in Kendall Square. That attracts more established corporations and venture capital to the area.
Which creates more opportunities, more funding.
Right. And those corporations and investors then often reinvest back into MIT research, completing the loop.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's just crystal clear how this symbiotic relationship amplifies innovation to a global scale. It really is a masterclass in ecosystem building.
It truly is. It didn't happen by accident.
All this discussion about structure and ecosystems, it leads us directly to the tangible output of the MIT model. Its undeniable legacy of scientific and technological breakthroughs and, well, its immense economic impact. This is where it really gets compelling, I think.
Oh, absolutely. MIT's history is just this incredible chronicle of transformative invention. If you look at military and aerospace back in WWII, the Rad Lab's microwave radar was absolutely instrumental in the Allied victory.
Right, we mentioned that. The instrumentation lab pioneered the inertial guidance systems for the Apollo missions, literally helped put humans on the moon. And Lincoln Laboratory developed the MODES air traffic control radar beacon system that's now the worldwide standard for aviation safety. Keeps planes safe every day.
Amazing impact. What about computing?
Computing and the internet. Well, Project Whirlwind produced one of the very first digital computers capable of real-time processing. Huge leap. MIT researchers like Leonard Kleinrock developed packet switching theory that became a foundational building block for the internet itself.
Wow.
MIT was a key early node in the ARPANET, the internet's precursor, and later the RSA algorithm developed right there at MIT. That became the backbone of secure e-commerce. Encrypts countless online transactions every single day.
So much foundational stuff. And life sciences.
Life sciences and biotechnology. MIT researchers achieved the first chemical synthesis of both penicillin and vitamin A. They made crucial contributions to sequencing the Human Genome Project. And of course, they pioneered CRISPR-Cas9 gene editing technology.
CRISPR, yeah. That's fundamentally changing medicine.
It absolutely is. And the pace just continues with modern and emerging technologies. You have things like the Media Lab's Kismet robot, one of the first social robots, breakthroughs in transparent solar cells, self-healing concrete, and just groundbreaking work in nearly every subfield of artificial intelligence and machine learning today. This isn't just, a random list. It really demonstrates how a specific approach to research can consistently yield these paradigm-shifting results.
Beyond these incredible inventions, though, MIT has this entrepreneurial engine powered by its alumni that's just astonishing. What are some of the most iconic companies founded by MIT folks that have really shaped our world?
Oh, the list is immense, truly. But some definitely stand out. You think about Akamai Technologies, founded by Professor Tom Layton and his student Daniel Lewin. Their content delivery network algorithms manage a huge percentage of global internet traffic. They literally speed up the web for all of us.
Right.
iRobot. From Professor Rodney Brooks and students Colin Angle and Helen Greiner, they popularized domestic robots with the Roomba vacuum cleaner, bringing practical robotics right into our home.
The Roomba, yeah. Everyone knows that.
Dropbox. Founded by student Drew Houston, it's just democratized cloud-based file storage, made digital life seamless for millions. Boston Dynamics, famous for those incredible walking robots like Spot and Atlas.
Those videos are amazing.
Aren't they? And maybe a couple more recent ones. Ginkgo Bioworks, a leader in synthetic biology, programming cells like computers. And Commonwealth Fusion Systems, started by researchers from MIT's Plasma Science and Fusion Center. They're a leading private venture trying to achieve practical fusion energy.
Fusion energy, a potential game changer for the planet.
Absolutely. A huge potential impact.
So that's an impressive list of individual companies.
Yeah.
But what's the collective economic impact? When you add up all this entrepreneurial activity, how massive is this whole MIT innovation juggernaut?
Well, there was a landmark report back in 2014 that tried to quantify it, and the findings are just staggering.
Lay them on us.
They estimated around 30,200 active companies founded by living MIT alumni at that time. These companies employed approximately 4.6 million people worldwide. And collectively, they generated nearly $1.9 trillion in annual revenues.
$1.9 trillion annually.
Trillion with a T. To put that in perspective, the report calculated that if these MIT alumni companies formed an independent nation, its economy would have ranked as the 10th largest in the world back in 2014.
10th largest. Bigger than countries like India or Russia at the time.
Exactly. It's just an economic force on a truly global scale.
Wow, that immense economic output. It feels like the ultimate modern expression of mens at Manus, doesn't it?
It really does.
It vividly shows the power of linking that deep scientific inquiry, the mind, with the drive to build, to scale, to deliver impact, the hand. It makes you pause and think about the sheer potential of institutions like this to drive global economic growth.
It's quite something.
Okay, so there's simply no questioning MIT's leadership in engineering. The rankings speak for themselves consistently, #1 by U.S. News & World Report, for decades, including, I think, #1 in 6 different engineering specialties just recently. Aerospace, chemical, computer, electrical materials, and mechanical.
That's right. 6 distinct fields at #1. It's quite dominant.
So why? What explains this sustained dominance?
Well, it really is a powerful synthesis of everything we've been talking about. That mens at manus philosophy. It doesn't just produce engineers. It produces these systemic thinkers who can connect theory and practice intuitively. The interdisciplinary research structure actively breaks down those silos, enabling engineers to collaborate broadly and tackle really complex, multifaceted problems.
History matters too, right?
Absolutely. Its long history of tackling grand national challenges, from wartime radar to the Apollo missions to energy, has given it unparalleled experience in large-scale, high-stakes projects. And finally, that hyper-dense Kendall Square ecosystem right outside its doors provides immediate, high-fidelity feedback from industry. It keeps the research, the curriculum, everything cutting-edge and deeply relevant.
That makes sense. Now, to truly appreciate MIT's unique position, it might be helpful to consider how it stacks up against its closest peers. How would you compare it to, say, Stanford University out on the West Coast and the California Institute of Technology, Caltech?
Yeah, that's a useful comparison. All three are absolutely world-class STEM institutions, obviously, but they definitely have distinct identities and maybe different centers of gravity. MIT, as we've discussed, you could call it the hard tech powerhouse. It thrives in that dense, urban Cambridge-Kendall Square environment known for its intense, rigorous culture. Its historical and current focus tends to be on hard tech, things like defense, energy, advanced materials, biotech, AI, all supported by that really structured internal pipeline. UROP, Sandbox, Dishbande.
Okay, hard tech powerhouse. What about Stanford?
Stanford, you might call the entrepreneurial epicenter. It's deeply embedded in Silicon Valley, physically and culturally. It has a very venture capital-driven vibe. Stanford tends to lean more towards software, internet technologies, and maybe business model innovation. And generally speaking, it's perceived as offering perhaps a more balanced lifestyle than MIT's intensity.
Right, Silicon Valley connection is key. And Caltech.
Caltech is different again. You could call it the pure science jewel. It's much smaller, much more intimate than either MIT or Stanford. Its focus is intensely on fundamental science and theoretical research. It has incredibly deep ties to NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, JPL, which it manages. So think physics, astronomy, space exploration, really deep science.
So when you put them side by side, like that MIT is the hard tech powerhouse, Stanford the entrepreneurial epicenter, Caltech the pure science jewel, what does this comparison really tell us about the ultimate source of MIT's specific engineering leadership?
Well, I think it tells us that MIT has deliberately built what you could call a full-stack engineering ecosystem.
Full stack, like in software.
Kind of, yeah. Meaning it possesses world-class, highly integrated capabilities at every single stage of the innovation process, from government-funded fundamental research at the very beginning, all the way through development, mentorship, and finally to venture-backed commercialization and global market deployment. This unique model seamlessly connects that entire innovation stack. That comprehensive integration from discovery to deployment is arguably the key to its sustained engineering preeminence.
That's fascinating. That sustained preeminence comes not just from being good at one thing, but from having this comprehensive integrated system. It really makes you think about how that sort of full stack approach could be applied to challenges in your own field or organization, doesn't it?
It definitely offers a powerful model.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, it feels pretty clear that MIT's innovative power isn't just, a collection of brilliant individuals or lucky breaks.
Not at all.
It's really an emergent property of this complex integrated system, a powerful engine that's been amplified by its founding vision of mens et manus, constantly fortified by that history of crisis-driven adaptation we talked about, powered internally by its unique ecosystem of labs and programs, and then dramatically amplified by that symbiotic relationship with Kendall Square.
And the result, they're just undeniable. You see this legacy of world-changing inventions, radar, the internet's building blocks, CRISPR, so many others. And then you see this entrepreneurial output so vast that the companies founded by its alumni literally create an economy larger than many nations. It consistently fulfills that core mission to advance knowledge and bring this knowledge to bear on the world's great challenges.
So as you, our listener, reflect on MIT's incredible story, maybe consider this. Where in your own endeavors, your work, your life, can you foster a stronger connection between mind and hand, between deep understanding and practical action? And how might you intentionally build an ecosystem, even on a much smaller scale, that truly nurtures ideas from their very inception all the way to impactful realization? We hope this deep dive has given you some valuable insights and encourage you to explore these ideas further.